Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Outlier Podcast. I've got an interesting friend with me who runs technology at Georgia Zone. I've got Kevan Wilson with me. Hi Kevin, how are you doing, sir? Firstly, thank you for joining in.
Hey, Anurag, doing well. Hope you are as well.
I was not, right? I was down with fever for almost 5 days, and after that, today I've just broken out of my shell and trying to get back to life. So today doing better. Thank you.
Yeah, glad I can welcome you back to the real world.
Pretty much. I'm pretty much you're walking me back to the real world. Until yesterday, I was zombie. So thank you for that. So, quick introduction: who Kevin is. Kevin is the CTO of Georgia Zone Trade Union. All of us know where Georgia Zone is based in Atlanta. Born and raised in Georgia, like forever. A Georgia guy, very much deep rooted in the community, and hence in the movement for almost 1.5 decades. So he's in technology for almost 25 years and in credit unions for the last 15 plus years. One interesting nugget, even with this amount of wisdom and experience, Kevin still went back to school at Penn State a couple of years back to complete his master's in enterprise architecture. That's another feather in the cap, Kevin. Congratulations on that. So I hope I was able to at least summarize your 25 years of experience in 25 seconds by doing a horrible job. So if you want to add something, feel free to add.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic, Anurag. I got to get you to open for me. That did a really good summary there. My career journey, like you said, has always been in the state of Georgia, born and raised here. Never necessarily had the intention of always staying, but now that I look back, a few decades into the workforce, thrilled that I've been able to do so and been able to have an impact to the communities that I grew up in and that I live in today. Went to University of Georgia to get my undergrad. I'm back around the Y2K craze, and IT was still kind of a buzzy scenario out there and wasn't necessarily fully leveraged or fully driving every business at the time, but it was enough to intrigue me and kind of set me down that career path. I think the dogs were getting me on that track, and then really happened to fall into the credit union space. Had real intentions of being at the Googles of the world, if you will, and really doing something really cutting edge technology, and happened to come across the credit union space, and absolutely fell in love with the ability to bring technology and advance the organization and kind of the way we run the business, but to do so in a way that's truly impacting the communities. Again, it's really being able to stand next to my neighbor, to someone in the grocery store, meet a friend of my daughter's parents around town, and be proud about where I work at Georgia Zone, and know that we're there solely to serve financial needs of those that are in our community. So my career journey's continued, as you mentioned, kind of a lifelong learner. I usually say static electricity is the phrase. Static because I've been at Georgia Zone for such a long time, but electricity because it's charged. It's always changing. There's always something new, always something to learn tomorrow that really keeps me excited about what we're doing.
Another trivia is, Kevin, so I also have a background in IT. I did my Bachelor of Engineering or Technology, whatever you call it, information technology itself. Similar backgrounds. It's not very often that I talk to someone who has an exact degree in information technology. It's not that often. That's world is small. Kevin, let's talk about your journey. I know you summed up your journey very quick, but still, let's talk about your journey. I mean, how did this happen to you? Because for me, technology happened just as a natural career progression from liking mathematics to moving on to computer programming, then moving out of computer programming now, right? Now, so, but you're still very much in technology. So how did that happen, and what was your career journey?
Yeah, I think like a lot of folks that are in the space or have been in the space, it really was the childhood curiosity of just how does this work? How do I solve a problem? How do I do something different? So I necessarily wasn't the kid who bought a computer and ripped it all apart to figure out how it worked, but really wanted to understand how do I take this and do something with it. So one of the earliest real kind of IT as a career moments for me is I happened to tail along with my dad to his business, and he was doing some catch up work, and kind of maybe dismissive of the kid of, hey, you're bothering me, go go talk to this IT guy. He's always got some funny stories, some jokes, sort of thing. And he took me to the IT room, and it was one of those aha moments of, the doors open and the cold breeze kind of comes out of the computer room, and all these blinking lights and colored cables, and just this amazing world behind the scenes that really learned, this is what's running the business. If this room in this building isn't operating, the business doesn't operate. And that was kind of just the aha that I wanted to be in the space and be into the technology out there. And then being in the credit union space, being at Georgia's Own, it's such a amazing culture and amazing place to work. It's really one of those, it's a small organization. It's been one, over my many years, that where, if you want to do something, if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and learn something and really put yourself forward, you can kind of take charge of your own career. And so that journey's continued just because of a lot of self wanting to figure out what's the next opportunity to learn something or help somebody or figure out and solve a problem.
I completely get you. We're talking about the aha moment. Interestingly, the last 4 days I've been just out sick. It's pretty much doing nothing, but I was watching Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is one of the, I don't know if you watch Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is one of the, for everyone, it's one of the, I would say, series, kind of a comedy. Yeah, I would say a comedy series about startups of Bay Area. I've watched it possibly 4 or 5 times. So I can just position you as Guilfoyle. In case you watch the series, right? You'll get it. I can position you as Guilfoyle, just coding the shit out in their data center. I still remember. That's the full circle. And I'm doing a podcast with the CTO on Thursday morning after watching for Silicon Valley for 4 straight days. So that's fun now. So in terms of vision, obviously, Georgia's Own is not a small credit. It's not a small shop. It's not a small credit union. It's a pretty decent sized credit union, and hence you guys have decent technology budget. Obviously, technology budgets need to be spent or allocated very carefully. Otherwise, it just evaporates like this, right? It's not easy. So what is that technology vision that is driving the credit union over the next 3 to 5 years? And what does winning look like for you in that ecosystem?
Yeah, and Anurag, I love that you kind of framed it of the size of the credit union. There's definitely maybe a misconception or unknown that a lot of people have, and you think of the word credit union, if you even know what that means, you typically think of something very, very small, very, very limited in the services, and that's kind of the 1980s version of a credit union, right? So we do have some pretty robust technology and digital channels and amazing retail service. If folks do try to or do want to engage us in personal service, which we love building those relationships. But from the technology side, it's really engaging our member owners and trying to do that in ways that give them simplistic financial experiences. Because we know there's more important things to focus on in life, right? So the key words in our technology vision are engage and simplistic. So we want to actually understand what is out there in your world, in your life that's meaningful from a financial perspective, and engage you. We don't want to wait and hope that you have the time, can find the time to come in and engage us. We're certainly recognize that we're not in competition with just other credit unions, just big banks, other fintechs in the long run of it. We're competing against all of them. We're also competing against, just you as a person. You were sick all of last week, right? What if you had a financial need out there? We're competing against the parents that are out there that, are trying to raise, tiny people and bring them up in the right way. We're competing against, the YouTubes and the TikToks of the world that are just attention hogs. And so it's really that awareness that's the key thing for me and what I like to think about. And how do we win in that awareness? How do we make sure we're engaging you when you may need that next financial life changing event out there, or just your day to day? Is there a way we can kind of give you tips and tricks on maybe saving a penny today to get 2 pennies tomorrow, sort of a mentality? How do we engage you? But then when we do that, we've got to make sure the technology is simple, right? We joke just joining the recording here today of sometimes it's a little complicated. Sometimes it doesn't work. We always have that, but how do we make sure 99% of the time that experience of the digital channel is really, really simplistic, and you can actually get what you need to do without having to interact with somebody unless you choose to or want to.
Very Well thought out answer. The next question I hate to ask even, but since I'm a data scientist myself by background, so I don't talk about AI nowadays. I talk about still, data science. Let's talk about that. But obviously AI is coming very fast. LLMs were always there. Even 15 years back, we had LLMs, but it was not quite available for what I call citizen data scientists or citizen users, right? An average consumer did not know what AI was, but now it's catching up very fast. So where do you think is AI already showing up in your stack, and where are you still cautious about hedging our bets on AI?
Yeah, I love the way you frame it. That we mentioned my time at UGA many years ago, and then more recently at Penn State. It's even interesting to kind of see just from a higher learning education perspective. It was very much statistics. And kind of the learning bleeding edge of machine learning capabilities out there. And as we see the technology continue to grow and grow, the data compounding, expanding, it became data science and big data. And now we truly have that generative and agentic and agent based worlds out there. In some ways it feels like AI is everywhere. It's certainly in every conversation, every, topic, every, one's top of the list, but it has been a very slow process, right? I can think back, over the last decade, the tool, the techniques, the way we've approached cybersecurity, has been, very much, not what we would have said AI 10 years ago, within the definition of AI today. So not necessarily the generative world that we're living in, very much, the detections and the pattern recognition and all the things that AI is really, really good at, things we've been doing for a long time. And then, the real buzzy stuff, around agentic and kind of even still the agents, I think that's where we're a little more cautious, being a very regulated industry, having, all of our members, our customers' data, we know about you, and there's an immense amount of trust that's put in us. So how we handle that data, how we process that, how we, generate new versions or context of that is very methodical, very thought out, very, human driven out there for us. So that's really where we're still cautious about that, is how do we treat that trust with the utmost respect, and then make sure that we're not just leveraging that to go crazy with scale, but do it in the most effective way. We want that relationship to be lifelong with you. We don't want to burn that trust or misplace that trust.
I love when I hear the term machine learning while talking to someone. Otherwise, no one really talks about machine learning nowadays. It feels like everything is like under the wrap or bubble of AI. Everyone talks, anything under the sun, even regression is talked about AI nowadays. So I hate that, but you know how it works, right? So it's not easy to, identify the fluff and the actual thing nowadays, because everyone talks about it.
Yeah, it really is. And, it's funny. Every product has some AI marketing now, or, a lot of companies in the last several years have just grabbed the .ai domain and added that to
Exactly.
the name. And, they haven't changed anything other than added 2 letters to the company name. So it's interesting times.
That's a joke we make. It's a joke. That's an internal joke we have in a group of data scientists. We are like, dude, we never thought of talking about AI when we were actually doing machine learning and deep learning, ANN and CNN, actually like a neural nets, right? But now suddenly it has just been cool. So I don't talk about analytics anymore. I think I have to go and change my LinkedIn position from data and analytics to just AI.
Right.
Actually, I have, on my podcast introductions, the guest picture and my pictures, I've just changed my name. My designation as AI strategist. I was keeping it data and analytics strategist long time back, but now I've changed. The world is changing, so I should change for sure.
Yeah.
Coming on to the next question about, I'm a huge fan of simplicity, right? So I have a concept that I follow since I was 22. I follow a concept called power of 3. You cannot explain something within 3 bullets or 3 words or 3 sentences. Let's not even explain it, because you don't understand it better to explain it to the other person. Right. So my next question stems from that, right? So you talked about one-click solutions and like minimize workflow processes, right? As a goal, because that's what you want to do. I believe you are a fan of simplicity, right? I love Google because it's very simple. I like Apple. It's very simple. So how close are you to it? And what is the hardest friction point that is still there to eliminate? Because you're not doing it for your personal accounts, you're doing it for the entire credit union's workflow and the ecosystem. So what is the friction that is still there, you think, can be eliminated or should be eliminated?
Yeah. So one click solutions and kind of minimizing, optimizing the workflows of the business is something I've been passionate about for quite a while, and it's really, really challenging. The thought process is, how do we really get the top 5, top 10 things that are done in our business? And I need these data inputs, but once I have that, I click go. I click the go button, I click the easy button, the simple button, and all the minutia of the back end really just runs. And so, we really started a lot of work around that probably about a decade ago, before a lot of the AI tools that are out there now became available. So standard automation concepts, robotic process automation activities, etc. And we got pretty far down the road. We were able to save several millions of dollars of operating expense, and then kind of pour that back into how we serve our members, how we invest in other technologies, etc. But I would say we're still far away. I love Eric Carle's Pancakes. It's a children's book. It's a fond family memory. I was able to take my daughter to a play here in Atlanta of that production of Pancakes when she was very little. If you're not familiar, it's the story of this child that wants pancakes. He wakes up and wants pancakes, and the mother kind of educates him on really how complicated it is to make a pancake. And, in today's world, we think it's this super simplistic process. You can even go to the store and, buy the box that all you do is add water, and you can have pancakes in, 2 minutes. But you really need the seed to be able to grow the wheat. You need the wheat to be able to harvest the flour. You need chickens to lay the eggs. You need cows to produce the milk and the butter. And you realize that there's this tremendous chain of events that really have to happen to have that one box and make it simple. So we're continuing to move down that journey. We're probably somewhere trying to figure out if the chicken or the eggs coming first or last in some of those scenarios. Yeah. We continue to, have, there's a greater next piece of the puzzle that always kind of comes to fruition or comes bubbling up. And I would say that the hardest friction point, you mentioned that, is really the same thing that even today's AI struggles with, is those decision points when it is not repetitive and when it does truly require the human to be in the loop, and the human needs to really make that decision. If I'm working with you on an auto loan, the rate may be better or worse that I can give you, but what's the right decision for you? Not just the lowest payment you can have today, but what's the best financial decision for you, for the rest of your life? How do we really think through that? And so the friction point there is, we still need humans. We still have tremendous value in humans and having that relationship and that bond out there. So the one click is still the underlying goal out there, but the journey is continuous.
Thanks. Now I'll ask you not a difficult question, but a question I've thought through for a while is, you understand the importance of data. You're not an average, sorry to say, you're not an average CTO. You're a good guy, right? So how are you actually using data to move beyond like the generic, mundane banking that all of us hate, right, to a greater North Atlanta personalized experience, right? Because each community is very different. New York versus Atlanta, 2 different worlds. So expectations are very different, right? So how are you using data to shape up personalized experience in your community?
Yeah. I think this is the $1 billion, question solution out there today is how do we really get that hyper personalized experience? And, as fantastic as AI can be, it's all about the data. That's, the ingredients that make the delicious produce, solution at the end of the day. So the data really is the key. You talked about the Atlanta experience. It is very challenging to be a financial institution. The landscape is very strong in Atlanta, but we also have a lot of focus across very rural and suburban areas throughout the state of Georgia, which makes it even more complicated, right? So it's not just the Atlanta focus, but how do I also serve the communities that are thousands of people, not thousands of people in one neighborhood. So it's a dynamic that we really spend a lot of time thinking about and planning, opportunities for. One example I'd throw out there is just our website. If you come to our website and you interact a time or two, we're constantly tailoring your interaction there. So we want to, you go to any website today, right? And you get the cookie prompts and et cetera. But we are taking data that you're producing during that experience, and we're learning from that, right? So if you are spending some time looking at auto rates, we're going to make sure that your next visit to the site is catered towards that. If you're doing activities that looks like you're leading up to maybe put your house on the market and sell, we're trying to present the experience that maybe tailors that to your life. So we're constantly getting lots of data and trying to leverage that trust in the appropriate way. There's a balance between kind of the creepy use of data, and we've all browsed something on the internet, and then it pops up in our shopping cart feed or in our next session out there. We don't necessarily want to know everything about you, but when you're engaging with us, we want to really treat that data as gold and make sure that we're leveraging that to give you the best experience and the best financial journey across your life experience.
Makes sense. So that's at least reassuring to hear from a CTO about talking sense about data. So that was appreciated, Kevan. Let's move gears, right? Because I'm a huge fan of mentorship, by the way. I mean, I reach out to 10 different people to mentor me every day. Right? So let me ask you, so not directly mentorship, but people have influence. I mean, a lot of my bosses, a lot of my well-wishers who are entrepreneurs have had very deep influence in whatever I do or whatever I will do going forward. So talking about influence, I'm sure you also have had people who have influence. It might be your parents, it might be a professor, right? Who has had the biggest influence in your career? If you were to carry one piece of advice, one of the people who influenced you that you actually follow still to the day, what would they be?
Yeah, I love this question. I love the kind of just the topic of leadership and talking about that. The mentorship piece is really the common thread, right? And I've had mentors that I didn't even know were mentoring me. I've had folks that I reached out and put together a proposal for them to mentor me and kind of beg them to do so. But the influence for me, the one that really stands out, which I think is unique, so I love really telling it and was super impactful for me, is one of the employees that I was actually managing. They had the biggest impact to me, and it wasn't super early in my management career, but it's over a decade ago, probably now, but someone that probably was as good of friends as you could have in a work environment. So very kind of close, very open, not overly guarded in any of the conversations or the topics that we would go around about. As I continued to advance in my career, more and more pressure would build and more accountability would be out there. My reaction to that was to kind of push that pressure down and push that accountability down. They had the guts, had the respect, the care for me to pull me aside and just set me down and say, hey, the way you're treating myself and some of the other employees is not good. It's not productive. We know you're under pressure. We know you've got a lot of accountability on your shoulders, but we're trying our best and we're falling short, but we're giving it, our all. We can't get through this. We can't, figure out how to do this. We're struggling with this. And so Ed, we'll call him, really just sat me down and kind of opened my eyes that, I was kind of falling into the standard level one manager type of, just raising my voice, getting angry, getting, frustrated and, not being a good leader and not listening, to the team. And so that piece of advice, was really just pause, take a breath, like listen to the feedback. Let's work together on the solution. Typically, the yelling, the screaming, banging your fist doesn't necessarily provide a solution. It can be a motivating tactic for a lot of people, but it's not going to provide the solution. And sometimes the people we're leading or working with just need someone else to come to the table and help sit down at the whiteboard and create the solution.
I think this was, for lack of better words, a gold that you just struck, right? I mean, when I look back, very similar experiences what you talked about. I mean, it can be just one specific podcast. In the interest of time, let me just go through one last question, Kevan. Summing up the entire podcast, well, it was a combination of your journey, what to think about technology, and moving on to mentorship, not mentorship, at least advice. If I were to ask you about specific tenets about your leadership philosophy, right? How has your leadership philosophy changed over a period of time? Because obviously all of us started day one without managing our team. We were ICs. From individual contributor to finally leading our team to leading the entire technology charter for a large credit union. How has this evolved over a period?
Yeah, it's you kind of get typical, you're the high producer, the most knowledgeable person, you get thrown into a manager role and then you just figure it out. And I think it's certainly changed over time. The two big tenets that I have out there today are, remember you're only a leader if others are following. So you got to stop and, look around, make sure that people are out there and want to be led by you. Otherwise, you're just walking really fast and no one's, keeping up. And the other is really be kind to your future self. How do we spend a minute, an hour, whether it's today, this week, focusing on tomorrow, on next week, next month. And that goes for yourself, for your teams, for your company, for your family, whatever that is. You're spending a little bit of time focusing on what is out there in the future. We too often get caught up in reacting to whatever's going on today. If we're going to be leading somebody, we need a destination to go to, and that's somewhere in the future. So making sure we're focused on what's out there for tomorrow.
Makes. So Kevan, this was a very well-rounded interview. Usually my interviews end by 20 minutes. This was 32 minutes. So you can understand how good was it, right? So again, sir, thank you. Appreciate your time today for sharing these nuggets. This was amazing. And thank you again.
Yep. Thank you, Anurag.